Good day, chosen ones. I'm so excited to bring to you today the results from my live trading session this morning. The markets have absolutely been amazing to us. A lot of people talked about Trump, the tariffs, and the markets being unpredictable, but we predicted everything step by step. And if you go back through my last couple videos about manual trading, you could see that we called out, this sell last Thursday and then this move also on last Friday. One of the things that we talk about inside of the playbook, which is my video course, is we talk about 3 weeks of breakout traders in the market, right? And you can see prices always in a rectangle. That's one concept that I teach inside the playbook. And as you see, price was in this rectangle. Price was in this rectangle. And then price broke above this rectangle. And then you can see in three specific pumps, we have one, two, three. And on the third pump, it was trapping volume at the very high. When you scroll into this, you can see exactly what I mean when I say pumping the volume up at the high. So most people, they're not trading from the bigger time frames. They kind of get caught up on the smaller time frames, chasing little bitty movements. And a lot of times doing that, they miss the real opportunity, the big opportunity, the A plus plus setups, the A triple plus setups, right? And we have the ability to catch those consistently because we actually understand the market, right? We're not catching random moves. We're waiting for specific setups that I teach. All right, so this was last Thursday. You can see how, price closed in breakout. That's one of the concepts that I teach. And then price started making lower lows as the New York session started. And then price came down to liquidate, some of this volume that it was generating on the way up, right? Because as price was buying, people were putting their stop losses at these higher low points. And that's why price usually goes down so aggressively to grab that liquidity, right? And it just traded back into the traders that got it right in the previous New York session, right? So just think about the traders that bought it here, or once price started moving up, they bought it in this area, right? This came right back to their entry, more than likely stopping most of these people out, or maybe even getting them at a break even or a small loss. And then, price pump one more time. And then during the New York session on Friday, the markets absolutely melted. And you can see one of the setups that I like to trade and that I also teach in the playbook is called a false break reversal. And what happens with a false break reversal is price pumps up and you can see price tried to get people to start shorting early during the London session. And then as soon as people start shorting, it pumped up and it pumped up, very aggressively. And just think about how many people were trading this because the New York equity hour open starts at 6:30, right at, the 6:30 time frame. 6:30 PST time frame, and you can see price pumped up at 6:30. And just think about all the volume that's trading at the start of the market. That's usually all the retail traders, people that are probably trading early before the market opens, people trying to get a leg up. And usually that's the retail traders, right? They have that fear of missing out and they trying to get into the markets as soon as they see, big movement in one direction. And usually that's the setup, right? The market is going to push you in one direction and then it's going to fail and go back to the opposite side. Because when you think about when people were buying in this area, anytime you're buying, where would they put their stops? More than likely, it's going to be underneath that previous low, maybe here, right? And that's why you see price aggressively came and swept out these lows. So let's go ahead and go to today because I kind of gave you some context on what happened at the end of last week because that's really going to show you the opportunity that presented itself today. So you can see the market closed here. We had this big sell-off. And then when the markets opened, it opened over 500 points above the close, which is abnormal, right? That means price is manipulated. And that's why price came back down to kind of grab some of that money that was left behind on this big, big move. So as you can see, price came back down. It crept back down into this 50% level. And I'm basically just measuring the low to the high. So we're in this current rectangle, right? Like I said earlier, you always want to identify as price being in a rectangle. So you can see in this particular rectangle right here, price traded higher. And then think about the start of the new day, right? This is the Asia session. You can see that price pumped up very aggressively. When you see price pump up very aggressively at the beginning of the session, that should be like an alarm going off in your mind because they're not going to give away free money, right? Usually this is the setup. They're trying to get people to go long so they can trap volume at the height of the session, and then they can liquidate all of these people that they've been setting up during the off hours, right? Just think about, people that were buying in here, buying during the markets were like basically chopping and moving sideways, right? And you can see how aggressively it came down. That's why we call this the escalator elevator, right? It's slow creeping trend on the way up, and then once volume is trapped, it liquidates that volume very, very quickly. Like I was saying earlier, when you see buys in this area, where are people putting their stop losses? More than likely below these lows, right? And that's why the market sliced through these stop losses, very aggressively. So as we see this and the markets are starting to open, we see that the price is coming back down to this level in three pushes. And I want to identify that so you guys can start to learn to identify this on your own charts. We have one push, two pushes, three pushes. And I actually said this on my live session this morning. When you see price move in three pushes, that is what you usually see when the market is exhausting, right, is struggling to make new lows, right? So instead of having these big movements, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So as we were on the session this morning, I was talking about this particular setup, and many people wanted to short this market so hard because it was in a downtrend and it dropped, significantly. If you look here, you see it's about 24,500. It dropped all the way down to 24,264. So it dropped about 240 points, right around 240 points. So think about this at the right timing. This is at 6:30 a.m. PST. Don't forget, this is where all the retail money is in the markets. Do you think that they're going to just give you a drop that goes all the way down? Not at all, right? This was the setup, like I just told you. They pushed the volume very hard in this direction and they swept the low of the day. And this is one of the things that I talk about, a false break reversal. This is a false break reversal at the low of the day, the low of the new day, right? This was the low of Friday. This was Monday. So Monday's low was right in this area. And then this was Tuesday's low. And as you can see, price pumped up aggressively. And then at 6:30, it came and swept these lows. And then price started to work higher, going back to where price failed at the very beginning. And I called this trade out perfectly on a live session this morning. I didn't particularly take this trade because for me, I want to see a more textbook setup. I kind of like to wait for the big opportunities like this. I'm not so really interested in catching these little bitty trades. I'll give them to my community. I'll give them to the people that follow me because, most people like to trade every day. But for me, I like to wait and get a trade where you can go all in, where it's just moving in one direction and it's not coming back for the rest of the day. So usually those happen at least one or two times per week. So for me personally, I like to wait and take those trades instead of trying to trade every single day, every single session. And the more you start to study this information, the more you start to trade in live time and build your skill set, you're going to feel the same way. Because sometimes less is more, right? You become more efficient, you become more confident because you don't take, setups that fail and lose a lot of trades. I have been blessed to really master my own strategy and system, and I rarely ever lose a trade. I know I'm trading over 90% accurate for the whole year. And that is pretty phenomenal, right? That is something that is it's difficult to do, but it's definitely possible when you become a master of your craft. And I've put over 20,000 hours into the market, and I definitely consider myself a master. And in my own opinion, I'm the best trader to ever live. And you really have to think like that if you want to be great, right? Could you imagine if Kobe Bryant just thought he was an average basketball player? If Michael Jordan thought he was an average basketball player? The reason they became great is because they had that intention and then they put the work behind it. And that helped them build that unwavering confidence. And that's what you have to do when you want to be successful in everything. And some people think like, oh, these people are blessed with this talent. These people are born with this talent. And I'll tell you this, nobody is born with it. Sometimes it may come easier to some other people because they may already have habits that align with the habits that'll make you successful in this particular industry, but it's not natural for anybody. It's natural to do the wrong thing. It's natural to do the opposite because our brains, the way we're programmed, is our brains. We live in the reptilian brain. We live in a lower frequency, and you have to intentionally increase your frequency to live in another dimension. And when I say that is the energy centers in your body. And if you aren't familiar with this information, I'm not going to go too far in detail because I don't want to get too far off track, but you need to study the energy centers of your body. And if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it about, tell me more about the energy centers in my body. Tell me how can I manipulate my energy? It'll give you a lot of information on how you're in control of how the world sees you. You're in control of what you manifest, right? Because your energy level and the energy that you push out to this dimension is going to attract equal and like energy right back to you. So if you living in lack, in fear, in greed, those are lower levels of vibration, and you're going to attract that. When you living in fear, you're going to maybe not take this trade, right? Maybe not take this trade or take this trade in a sale because you're afraid that, oh, it's leaving without me. And then price end up taking you out for a loss when you should have never took this trade to begin with. You should have been patient and wait for the setup. So if you've been trading already and you're not successful, it's not because you haven't had a good system or a good coach or a good teacher. It means that you don't have any discipline because even with the most basic strategy, you should still be a profitable trader. Why? Because it really doesn't come down to the strategy because the markets can only go up or down. If you're not successful, it's because you haven't mastered risk management, you haven't mastered emotional intelligence, and that's what it takes to be a trader. In my own personal opinion, I feel like trading is the biggest tool to help you become a better human being all the way around. And it translates to every other area in your life. When I became a master trader, I started to win in every area of my life, right? My marketing agency exploded. Um, my sports agency exploded. My credit and funding business exploded. And now I have multiple streams of income that are not related and all, doing very, very well. And I all attribute that to the discipline I learned from trading, right? Because it's not like sports. I have a sports background. I played football at the University of Texas, won national championship, done some amazing things in sports. Even in powerlifting, I was a world champion in powerlifting. I was a national level bodybuilder, even though I only did one show, right? I've done things at the highest level in multiple sports. And the reason why I've been able to be successful is because I understand how to put the work in, right? When I do something, I become totally obsessed. When I first started learning how to trade, my entire family thought I was crazy because I was losing money here, losing money there, and they saw me losing money I had never touched before. They saw me lose money that my entire generation together combined. had never touched before, right? Because I grew up in a low income neighborhood. My mom probably never made more than 40 or $50,000 a year. And I make that every day. If I don't make $100,000 every day, then something is terribly wrong, right? And that's how it should be. You should live in abundance, right? And you can do that. You have the power, but it takes discipline. It takes consistency to be able to get that done. And trading is the best way to harness that. And I would bet anything on that. So back to the charts. I want to show you the exact setup so you know how you can take advantage of this next time. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to wait for price to make a low of the day or a high of the day because that's the only places we want to trade from. We want to trade from the high, the low, or previous close, right? Those are the three areas we want to trade for. So as price was dumping down, we were being patient. We waited for price to sweep this level and then close back inside. Once price closed back inside, that was our signal to take this trade long, one bar stop, and then we're aiming for where price broke out, right? The traders that are in the money, that's who we aiming for. So these traders that traded this sell, right in here, that's exactly was the target because price is always hunting who's in the money, right? Because these traders had a free trade and it was never any heat put on these traders. That's why we had the escalator elevator, right? This slow creeping trend, it got people trapped at the low of the day and then it reversed back to the high, taking out all those stop losses. Think about when people were selling right here, right? When this big black candle closed, if they were selling, their stops was probably right above here. Same thing in this area. If they were selling right in here, their stops was probably above this high, right? And you could see like out of all of these stops, price aggressively took all of these levels when it reversed. So this is the same things that I teach inside the playbook. If you guys want more information, we have a Telegram group, which I'll drop below. We have live sessions. We have automated strategies. We have an affiliate program. We have multiple ways for you to get involved and for you to monetize this information. So I'm excited to learn about you. I'm excited to meet you, and I'm excited to help you build a new life with this information. I pray you guys have a phenomenal day, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.